a week on Talkin Beavers, and wow, what a turn of events. Oregon State coming off its most decisive win of the season, a 48-point win over Cal, while Oregon coming off its first loss, an overtime stunner against Stanford. Welcome, I'm Katie Brown, along with Mike Parker and Jordan Whitley and Tim Ewis. And Saturday night, both teams on the field at the same time, Mike, and there was a very surreal moment at Reser Stadium, I know, in the second quarter. Tell me how you called it on the radio, what the situation was, because it was special for a lot of Beaver fans.
Well, it was one of the more amazing juxtapositions I've ever seen in time in life, to have the Beavers on the field at Reser, and I'm watching, calling the play on the radio in front of me, but to my right is a monitor which had the Oregon-Stanford game on. So it was sort of like Sean Mannion off of play action. I'm looking back over. Meanwhile, Stanford attempting a kick. Mannion throws to Brandon Cooks, comes back, makes the catch. The kick is good, and Eugene Cooks races across, touchdown Beavers, and Stanford wins the game in overtime. It was one of those rare moments that created, and Jordan, you felt it too, just an unbelievable exhilaration in the stadium.
It was a moment where you realized what was happening. I was trying to put it into words. It was like that scene in The Godfather with the baptism and the murder happening right next to each other. It was just, everyone in the press box was watching at the same time, but you could hear the crowd just getting louder and louder, and then you realized that they'd actually put Oregon's score on the board, and even the guys on the field were like, well, what's going on? Right. But they kind of figured it out as the game went along. But, and then after that, I'm sorry, it just got crazier. Evanson Bernard gets down on one knee, proposes to his girlfriend right there on the 20-yard line. She said yes, and my head was spinning. So.
Talk about pressure. You propose on the football field.
What's she going to say?
You better make good after that. But so you're calling two plays at one time and just one. and suddenly now the Civil War has a little different meaning than we thought it might have a few weeks ago, but this is still a very important game.
Absolutely. Jordan Poyer was asked, and we talked to him this week, would you have wanted to be the team that knocked them off? But Jordan said, sure, we were looking forward to that. But now, also, you'd like to it doesn't matter in the Civil War who's won or lost going into it. But the event is huge, and we're all excited about it.
And we spoke to Jordan a little bit about the implications of this game, but I was talking to him how they came off that Stanford loss and how this team was coming off an emotional loss. And he said, we played our best game coming off a loss, so we're expecting Oregon to come in and really be aggressive and be tough.
Absolutely, which leads us to, Tim, as a player, you're framing up a team coming off an overtime loss at home, all but ends, not officially, but for all intents and purposes, ends their clear path to playing for a national title, possibly a BCS game, depending on how things shake out in the Civil War. How does that frame up mentally for these two teams coming together?
Katie, that's tough. It's very, very difficult to rebound from that type of loss. The goals that the Oregon football team had set for them by the fans, by the media, and most importantly, by themselves, were very lofty. And to be where they're at, a one-loss team, it's almost a letdown for the media, for the fans, and for themselves. And they're a much better team than we know that letdown is. And so for them to rebound is going to be tough, but it's very doable. And we know that Chip Kelly's going to have a great game plan, and Nick Alliott is going to have a great game plan, and those guys are going to coach their teams up. And same position for the Beavers, coming off the biggest win of the season where almost nothing could go wrong. Got to watch yourself a little bit and make sure that you're keeping yourself in check, getting ready for that game.
Yeah, it made the Ducks seem more human, don't you think? For a lot of people, they had run away in the second half. Nobody could keep pace with them, and Stanford proves it can be done.
Stanford game plan was brilliant. They did a great job. We saw firsthand the week before down at the farm how good Stanford is, so it was no huge surprise to Beaver Nation or the coaches or players, because Stanford did a great job, particularly on defense.
They really did. You look at the first quarter, and they set the tone. About 11 minutes in, Mariota goes out and has an option pitch. And that option play, I learned a lot from Coach Jay Shockey, coaching at Crescent Valley. And they always try to identify one guy as the pitch man. And what you see is it's clear who that pitch man is. But all of a sudden, two Stanford defenders just run through the Oregon blockers. And there's nobody to pitch off of, and Mariota just has to keep it. And a couple plays later, they try a little play-action pass, and Mariota is going to break contain. All of a sudden, one of those three great D linemen for Stanford is right there. And then the spy linebacker tackles Mariota, and they did a great job of executing their game plan all game.
And then they got that huge fourth down stop. The other side of the blueprint then, Kevin Hogan, who's a difference maker. I mean, he made plays against the Beavers that ultimately, I think, won that game for Stanford a couple of weeks ago. But they stop Oregon on a fourth down. Now, Oregon doesn't get stopped on fourth down very often, but they did here. Stanford then holds the ball for 7 minutes, 14 plays, 92 yards, culminating in a touchdown. Stanford's ahead 7-0, and you could tell right there this was going to be a different sort of game that Oregon was involved in, and ultimately they were not able to win it. But that blueprint offensively, pretty good, too, to hold the ball for that long.
Yeah, Coach Shaw said coming in he wanted to have those long, sustained drives,
right.
keep the other team off the field.
Sorry, Jordan. Holding the ball and scoring. Scoring is the big difference. The long drives that you're just referencing.
And then scoring, not field goals.
Scoring, where a lot of teams have won time of possession against Oregon, but it's kind of been a statistic that had no meaning to it because they weren't scoring. And so Stanford goes down and converts touchdowns. That's the way you beat them.
Okay, well, Mike Riley, as soon as his game ended, went right into watch that Oregon-Stanford game, I'm sure wanting to pick it apart. And here's what he told us he learned by watching the video from that game.
I learned that, once again, Stanford has a really good defense. And, they just played well, made plays. It's nobody else has really been able to do that. We've got to attempt to try to do the same thing within the style that we play.
Well, one Civil War decision that was settled early this week, the starting quarterback for Oregon State. It will be Sean Mannion. Cody Vaz is still out injured, and, well, Mannion, an easy guy to stay with after his performance against Cal. 4 touchdown passes, 325 yards passing. He was at the top of his game. Beavers just hoping he can keep it going into Saturday. Now, no such question for Oregon. Of course, they'll be going with Marcus Mariota. And what about the rest of the offense? What are the Ducks saying?
Well, they're looking at not just the run game, but the pass game, and we have to remember that early this season, Coach Kelly actually interviewed Jordan Poyer, calling him one of the best cornerbacks in the nation, and he was asked about him today, so take a look.
Jordan Poyer, I know you guys have said in the past you don't necessarily worry about one player, you have to worry about all 11, but a guy like that, how much do you have to be aware of where he is on the field and just his ball hawking ability?
It's the same, but there are other corners outstanding, so, anybody that goes into the game and says, hey, we're not going to throw away from Jordan and throw at Reynolds, it's like pick your poison. It's like saying we're just going to cover Wheaton, but we're not going to cover Cooks. You got to cover both those guys, and you got to be aware of both of those corners. And then that's what's really made the Oregon State a strength is they got guys at every position. So it's not you can't run away from one guy because you're going to run into another guy, or you can't throw away from one guy because you're going to throw in another guy. And the same thing on offense, you can't double Wheaton or you get beat by Cooks. If you double Cooks, you're going to get beat by Wheaton. So it's that's why they've had a lot of success this year. They got a lot of playmakers. They're healthy and they're making plays on both sides of the ball.
The rivalry, I watched it growing up. I'd been to some games, and I was both an Oregon Duck fan and an Oregon State fan. Obviously now, I resent them, and so, just being able to beat them at home my senior year would just mean everything, and I know we're gonna have to work for it. They're a great team, taking nothing away from them, but I think it's possible.
Astoria's own Jordan Poyer, all Beaver now, of course, and hoping for his first Civil War win in his last try as a senior. The Beavers have not taken this rivalry game in 5 years now, hoping to change that this weekend. And we welcome now Storm Woods, one of Oregon State's stars. After the huge win against Cal, you had a big game along with a lot of your teammates, and you guys put it all together. Now that you look at the Civil War, and I know this is your first year playing, you've been around a little bit longer, but do you appreciate this rivalry and what it means to everyone who has spent their whole lives in the state of Oregon, Storm?
Yes, I do. I'm aware that it's a very huge rivalry, but at the same time, we just want to stay focused and keep our same mindset that has led us to be so successful this year. So while it's a rivalry, it's just another game, and that's why we're looking at it.
And I'm glad you guys think of it that way, because I know it's a mental, preparation for a game like that. But I do like what Coach Riley had to say. He's like, this is a rivalry to be embraced. It's fun, and hopefully you guys are having some fun out there as well. And I got to ask you, I know you and Brandon Cooks are close, but are you guys, sharing clothes now? Is this his jacket? What's going on?
Yeah, he wore mine to class, so his was at the house. I just grabbed it on the way out.
Did anybody call you Brandon today?
No, not at all.
Now, when we're talking game prep, getting ready, it is a Civil War. Is anything different with the game prep? Still the same amount of meetings, still the same amount of classroom time, practice time, or are they adding in extra sessions here?
No, everything's the same as if we were playing any other Pac-12 competitor. So we're just taking things a day at a time so far.
So looking at the game plan real quickly, one thing that stood out to me was Stanford's the amount of times Ducks blitzed Stanford in that game, especially in the run game. And Stanford has a great run offense, as you know. They ran so many middle dogs. What's your role going to be trying to block those guys and then also trying to find running lanes against them?
I'm more worried about the blocking than the running. I think the running would just happen natural. But, Coach Riley and Coach Brasfield, they tell me along with the other backs that block is number one. If you don't block, you won't be out there. So that's going to be my first worry, just making sure Sean's protected so he can get the ball to our big-time playmakers and then take it from there.
Which you guys did a great job of last week on several occasions, so that's to be commended.
Thank you.
Well, that's the thing, Storm, blocking. It's a key for running backs, for receivers, for everybody. When you pop that 38-yarder in the first quarter, from a blocking standpoint, tell us how well it was blocked and then what your role was on that play.
It was a power play, meaning the guard pulls, Juice pulled. And at first it was a little crowded, but Coach Brasfield stressed all week to trust him. He's your blocker, so I trusted him. And then right about the time we hit 2 yards past the line of scrimmage, it started opening. And then I just hit it and tried to outrun the safeties, which I couldn't. So I had to give him a move and then go out of bounds.
You gave him a little sugar right at the top of that. I did see that. Now, you talk about guys continually stepping up on this team, and they've had it at quarterback, at running back, now at O-line. And Nielsen, I think, played a very good game for stepping in for Grant Inger. And he pulled once for you on one of your runs, and on your 38-yarder, he actually had a double team down. Talk about how that's worked out, all those guys stepping up and just making plays.
It works good. At the beginning of the season, Coach Riley said, just because you're the starter, your backups always be ready. You never know when the guy's going to go down. And I think that just shows how dedicated our team is, that, even though they're not starting, doesn't mean they're getting discouraged. They're working just as hard as the starters. And one play in particular was my touchdown. Nielsen pulled, he made the hole for me, and I squirted in there for a touchdown.
Well, of course, you guys have surprised so many people but yourselves this season, as you've had a fabulous season. But you had a lot of close games, all decided in the fourth quarter, until last weekend where you just blew it all up against Cal. Does that help your confidence going in against Oregon, knowing that you put it all together at the right time heading in?
Yes, it does. I think it really does, especially Cal being the game before Oregon.
People have been talking about how Oregon, they haven't been in a lot of tough situations, and it kind of bit them a little bit in this past game because they haven't been in those third down conversions they needed to have. But do you have a situation that stands out in your mind that your team's been through that made you better and makes you more prepared to take on a game like this?
One that stands out to me was Arizona. Arizona took the lead with about, 2 minutes on the clock. And I just remember looking Sean in the eye. He's just laughing, like, let's go, guys. And from that point, I think that's where our offense really starts to blossom. Our O-line didn't miss any protections. Receiver ran great routes, and Sean's, all of his balls were on the money. So I think at that point, that's when Sean just became our leader, our field general, and he led us to a win.
Coach Riley did say he had that look in his eye again this week. And I have to ask you something personal. I was talking to your mom, teared up a little bit, kind of hearing the story of how you got your name. So I want you to tell it.
My mom wanted a unique name, of course, and then she came up with Storm, and a lot of people asked, was it storming that night? And my grandma tells me I kicked up a storm. So it's because I kicked up a storm when I was in it.
Oh, really? Because she told me a different story. She said the storm is the strength of a man, and she wanted you to be strong, and you have to have faith to get through the storm. But I like both versions.
I like that. I like hers more.
Okay.
I like hers more.
And her name is Faith, so that works out really well.
Oh, yeah.
Faith and Storm, yes. And she is visiting this whole week, was there for Cal, will be there for Civil War, so it is a special week. Storm, thank you so much for being here with us, and best of luck against the Ducks on Saturday. A tremendous opportunity. Stanford kind of knocked them out of the national title picture, but you guys guys can keep them from having any shot at going to the Pac-12 championship game even. So a lot at stake for them. Good luck to you, and thanks so much for being here.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for having me.
All right.
Thank you, Storm.
And
Thanks.
you know what I love about having Storm? He always calls me ma'am. He's so polite. It's the Texas way. He does it
His
all
mama
the time.
taught him well. She's right over there.
We absolutely love it. We're glad you're with us for Talkin' Beavers, and we are talking about how Oregon State buried Cal with offense last weekend. 35 points scored in the first half, the most since they put up 42 against Eastern Washington 6 years ago. And then there's the total 62 points scored in a league game, the second most in program history, second only to the 66 against Washington State back in 2008, and 559 yards of total offense, second highest total this season, second to the 613 against Arizona. So many big numbers, and there were also 8 touchdowns by 8 different players. And so, Jordan, on the spot, who scored them?
Okay. Woods, Ward, Wheaton, Agnew, Anderson, Hatfield, Hamlet. Oh, I'm sorry.
She
What?
went all W's, A's, and H's in
And
that
Cooks.
order.
And
Cooks.
Very
And
good.
Cooks. She squeezed them out. Good
Nice
job,
work.
Jordan.
I forgot I was
Nice
going to
work.
try to.
Well
Nice
done.
job. All right. Well, it is time in the face of such a big game. I can't wait to see who gets the game balls this week. Presented by Wilson Motors. We start with Tim. Tim, who gets your game ball?
You know, you go 559 yards of offense, everybody could get a game ball. And in the NFL, that's how it would be. The whole offense would probably get one for 62 points. But I'm going to single one guy out that I watched this week and played a great ball game. That's Derek Nielsen. He stepped in for the injured Grant Inger, made his first start since his high school state championship football game out of Sheldon High School. And I caught up with him at practice. And here's what he thinks about the Civil War.
It's exciting. Like all my friends back home are all Duck fans, and they'll talk some crap to me and stuff, and I just try to prove them wrong every now and then.
So I can totally relate to Derek in that regard. You know, I think I graduated with 242 people at my high school, and 200 of them went to Oregon. So I caught a lot of flack every year, Civil War time. But, you know, I want to talk about a couple blocks he had, and really on Teron Ward's run in the third quarter, 47-yard touchdown. He had a great block down and seal there on the same little power play. Nice little gap created. And Ward just squeezed through there and bounced off. He had Vaseline on his uniform or something. They could not bring him down.
What were you calling him earlier?
He looked like the little grease pig when they're chasing him at the fairgrounds. It was awesome. It was a great run.
But Derek Nielsen was key part of that play.
Derek Nielsen, key part of that play and of a lot of the plays in the game. I mean, they got that power run game going, and he did a fantastic job of pulling and sealing down. So
I love it. Tim picks one of the unsung heroes. You know, on the offensive line, they get overlooked a lot. They don't get all the accolades, so they get the game ball for helping to set up all those scores. Mike, who you got?
Tim's a much shrewder, more subtle human being than yours truly, because I look at a quarterback throwing 4 touchdowns in the first half, and so I'm sorry if that seems cliche-ish or trite, but I thought Sean Mannion coming back, you know, after the quarterback situation, which has been somewhat unique at Oregon State this year, for him to come back.
That's putting it nicely and mildly.
And overcome an interception that wasn't necessarily his fault, and maybe a little bit of in the stands or elsewhere, what's going on. He came back and engineered some great drives. One of the 8 touchdowns, Sean Mannion had all night to survey his options. Marcus Wheaton was the number 1 guy. Marcus was covered, so he comes back, goes through his progressions, finds Micah crossing in the back of the end zone, makes a great throw. Hatfield, a tremendous tightrope act, but that was great quarterbacking by Sean Mannion, tremendous protection, great catch by Hatfield. But all in all, Sean really ran and controlled the game beautifully, got the ball to all of his explosive playmakers. So Sean Mannion back as the starter gets my game ball.
Well, you know, he was great to watch, and all that preparation paid off. I mean, he had been in the film room every morning at 8 a.m. with Coach Langsdorff, and, you know, he has some things to say about the Civil War. And this week, Tim Ewis caught up with Sean Mannion in this McDonald's McInterview.
watching the Stanford tape, good blueprint for success. Hogan made a lot of plays, and they kind of dinked and dunked their way down the field. You know, what do you see from that you can take away to help you?
Well, I mean, like you said, just a lot of completions. I think they were real good on third down, it seems like. It was my first impression. And, you know, I think it really shows that, you know, you can't move the ball on them. You're just going to have to be really sharp and see what they're doing to you and execute well. And I think Stanford did that.
So 0-0 heading into this week. Game on as usual. Nothing different since it's a Civil War.
No, absolutely. I mean, I'd be lying if I said we didn't all know it was a Civil War and it was a rivalry game, but the preparation aspect of it is the same. You know, we're preparing for a good opponent, as it is every week in the Pac-12. So, you know, really what we do day to day in practice and meetings and are just around our Valley Center is really all the same. We're just preparing for another tough opponent.
Love it. Wouldn't expect anything else out of you. Thank you.
Well, it was just so great to see Mannion sort of reclaim his mojo, if you will, after that tough game at Washington. And he's been such a good leader when he's been playing and when he hasn't been playing this season. So good to see him back at the top of his game heading into the Civil War. Welcome back inside Flattail Brewing in downtown Corvallis, where we're talking Beavers. And in the first half of our show, we learned that Jordan Whitley could rattle off all 8 players who scored touchdowns last weekend. She was fantastic. And Storm Woods was on our set wearing Brandon Cook's clothes today, of all things. He told us that the convincing win over Cal gives Oregon State some confidence heading into the Civil War. Now, after that loss to Stanford, boy, that really shook up the BCS standings for Oregon and a lot of other teams. And here's the latest standings. Notre Dame, the new team on top. Of course, it wasn't just Oregon. Kansas State falling out of the picture, too. They were previously up at the top. Oregon now number 5 in the BCS. Kansas State down to number 6. And Oregon State is at number 15. And this week, Mike Riley talked about facing Oregon's juggernaut offense.
You know, they have terrific speed guys everywhere. Their receiving core is good, and of course, DeAnthony is just a difference maker in all ways, whether he's running with the ball or receiving the ball or whatever they do with him. And Barner's one of the best players in the country. And the quarterback has very, very unique skills. I mean, the combination of his throwing ability, his ability, I really like how he throws. He snaps the ball quickly, makes great decisions, and then it's just doubly as dangerous when he pulls it down and runs. So there is the whole field you have to defend and a whole bunch of speed and good players.
Well, you know, Coach Riley, we asked him to list off some personnel, and he didn't even know where to start because the Oregon offense is set up in such a way that you have to defend every inch of that field. So break down some of the players that are really going to be X factors in this game.
You know, there's 2 guys I want to look at, and obviously where my heart's at, quarterback and the tight end. And we'll first look at Mariota. And, you know, that guy has changed that position at Oregon. In the past, they've had some great runners. They've always struggled in the passing game, and he's really showing he can be a thrower and a big-time threat in that game. And midway through the first quarter, he gets it done with his legs. Stanford comes in, and they run the 3 down and play a spy guy, and the spy guy guesses wrong. Mariota scoots out of the backfield and has a long gain, almost a touchdown, maybe if the blocking was a little different. So he can get it done with his feet and with his arm. That's what makes him special. And midway through the second quarter, Laerla catches a pass, and that guy is just tough to bring down, man. I mean, I think he broke 3 or 4 tackles, gets a first down. And when you have a beast like that in the passing game, that's a huge weapon over the middle.
Yeah. Colt Laerla out of Hillsborough High School. He's been dominating in this state for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, he's such a big guy. But then you look at the other weapons on offense, and Oregon has a very kind of different set of receivers in the fact that Coach Frost tells them, you know, you don't block, you don't get the rock. I mean, that's almost what they're there for sometimes. So talk about the guys, you know, on the outside.
Well, Jordan, the blocking, what you talk about, has been unbelievable for Oregon. How well they block with their front 5 and their tight end. But the receivers block well. A guy that we haven't even mentioned this far into talk. We haven't mentioned the name of DeAnthony Thomas. We haven't mentioned the name of Kenyon Barner. Barner in particular.
They're on Sports Illustrated's cover, and we haven't talked about him yet.
I mean, Barner, when I think about what Barner did at USC, I mean, he rushes for 321 yards, 5 touchdowns. Oregon rolls up 730 yards of total offense. I mean, USC is a proud program that's been playing football for 124 years, and they've never given up numbers like that to anybody individually or to a team. So the Stanford game does kind of give perhaps a blueprint. Okay, here's what Stanford did. Now just go out and do it. You'll win too. But for a team that scores 42 points, 13 straight games, 30 games 23 consecutive games with 30 or more points, an NCAA record. It's likely, I would guess, that Oregon will find ways to get the balls to their receivers in Addison and Huff. They're very good and fast on the outside. Darrell Hawkins is a very good receiver. We've already mentioned DeAnthony Thomas and Barner, how they can change the game in an instant.
Stanford did such a good job of not giving up the big play. I believe there was the 77-yard run, and then there was a 24-yard run and a couple passes here and there.
Right.
But you didn't see the chunks of yardage that they normally take, I guess, from the opponents. The 60-yard run, the 70-yard run, the 80-yard run that has become so routine. And that's where Stanford just said, we'll give you 3 or 4, but we'll make you turn it over on downs, or we'll make you punt it, which is a rarity in an Oregon football game.
Well, you take a look at Oregon's offense, and it all starts with that running game. So if you can start disrupting the running game, then you have a chance. And so it will be very interesting. Stanford able to disrupt things with their great defense that they have, and Oregon State will be looking to do the same. It is Civil War week on Talkin' Beavers, and take a look at the history. The first meeting between Oregon and Oregon State all the way back in 1894. And Oregon State won that first game, shutting out the Ducks 16-zip, but it's Oregon that holds the overall edge in the series. The Ducks with 59 wins, Oregon State with 46. And this weekend will mark the 116th meeting between the rivals. And this week's Standard TV and Appliance Rewind, Dwight James takes a closer look at the oldest college football rivalry game in the West.
The Civil War is the 6th oldest rivalry in Division 1A football. The Ducks lead the series 59-46 with 10 ties. The players admit this matchup is more than just a game.
When we were preparing to play the Civil War, especially the week of Civil War, it was time for business. I mean, it was like we were going to war.
Everything's out. The records are out the door. I mean, it doesn't matter who you are, what has happened in the past.
There's been only one Heisman Trophy winner in the series, Oregon State quarterback Terry Baker in 1962. His Beavers won that game despite his season-low 90 yards passing. In 1983, a 0-0 tie, commonly known as the Toilet Bowl, featured 11 fumbles and 4 missed field goals.
I think, personally, had something to do with the NCAA saying no more, end of this. We're going to the Kansas rule because we will not have any more kissing your sister. 0-0 tie, 16 turnovers, torrents of water coming down Autzen Stadium steps.
Because of overtime, this was the last 0-0 tie at the Division I level. The Beavers ended up losing to the Ducks from 1975 up until 1988, when Oregon State handed Coach Rich Brooks his first loss in the series in 12 years. In 1994, with Oregon trailing 13-10 in the fourth quarter, Duck quarterback Danny O'Neill took the Ducks on a 70-yard drive that culminated in a 19-yard pass to Dino Filyaw to give them the 17-13 lead.
Throws to Filyaw to the 10. The 5 is scored. Touchdown, Ducks.
You know, Dino Filyaw came in and he caught a pass. You know, I think it was just a quick out. And he took it to the end zone and he scored. And, you know, they kicked off to us and we had to drive. We drove all the way down to, I believe, the 2-yard line with like 6 seconds left on the clock or 10 seconds left on the clock. We had Orange's block, which was option right. You know, I was reading the end. The end bit on the fullback is wide open. All I had to do was walk in the end zone. And, you know, my guard lined up too far in the backfield, you know, because my goal, you know, when we were tall was to go straight down the line. I went straight down the line, but his foot was hanging back a little too far, and I tripped.
For the Beavers. And Shanklin trips and goes down, and the ball goes over to Oregon.
I tripped right on his foot. That was literally the game.
The Ducks would go on to make their first Rose Bowl appearance in 37 years. During the first overtime in Civil War history, Ken Symington ran for a touchdown in double overtime for a 43-41 Beaver victory in 1998. In the 2000 edition, Oregon came into the game ranked number 5 in the country, with Oregon State at number 8. Future first-round draft pick Joey Harrington threw 5 picks and fumbled once, earning the Ducks a 23-13 defeat and costing them the Rose Bowl.
We could have won the Pac-10 title outright, and I think Joey had 3 to 5 picks somewhere in there. I think one kid, their safety, had 3 picks by himself, and we ended up having to share the conference title with Oregon State and Washington, and we went on to beat Texas in the Holiday Bowl, but it would have been nice to be outright champs and go to the Rose Bowl.
A home field advantage took place from 1996 to 2006, where the home team came away with a victory up until 2007. In double overtime, the Beavers beat the Ducks in Autzen Stadium after a missed field goal in regulation.
That year, Oregon started out really, really well. I think they beat Michigan in Ann Arbor. Just a couple weeks before the Civil War, they were the number 2 team in the nation. And conversely, we had struggled early. Just like any Civil War, you get to the game and whatever you thought kind of goes out the window. And it was a double overtime game.
In the second overtime, James Rogers found the back of the end zone to give the Beavers a huge victory in Autzen.
They're having fun, that's what it's all about. I just keep a big smile on my face and get the ball to the person, so.
In 2008, the Ducks stopped the Beavers from getting to the Rose Bowl with a 65-38 blowout, setting multiple Civil War records.
Masoli running, scrambling. Masoli's going to try to run for it. He gets it! Masoli with a great play!
Then, 2009 marked the first time that the Civil War guaranteed the winner a Rose Bowl berth. And in a back-and-forth game, Oregon went on to represent the Pac-10 in the 2010 Rose Bowl, their first appearance since 1995.
For tomorrow, nothing's getting done in Eugene. Oregon is going to the Rose Bowl.
In the 2010 edition, Oregon came into the game ranked 2nd in the BCS standings and needed to win the game to secure a spot in the national championship game.
Katz will go back and throw. With pressure coming, Katz is hit. The ball is up in the air, and Oregon can't get to it.
The Ducks established their dominance in the first quarter on defense, and in the third quarter, a memorable fake punt sent Michael Clay 64 yards to set up a touchdown by DJ Davis.
Oregon is going to play in the national championship game.
In the 2011 edition, Oregon had just come off a heartbreaking loss to USC, squashing its national championship hopes. But that didn't keep the Ducks from ringing up 28 points in the first half and eventually running over the Beavers 49-21, sending Chip Kelly to his second Rose Bowl in 3 years.
Oh, Dwight Jaynes. I always love hearing him give that historical perspective in his Godfather voice. Now, so many memories from the Civil War for both of you, and this is actually going to be my first Civil War, so I'm sure it's going to be a memorable one. But, Tim, I want to start with you. I want to know your favorite Civil War memory. Tell us the story.
I have a lot of Civil War memories. I played in 4, sat on the bench as a redshirt in 1, and played in 2 in basketball as well. So I have a lot of memories. This one doesn't pertain to a game I played in. It was one I attended, the 1998 Civil War, the last one in Parker Stadium. And, I sat beside Troy Polamalu. We were being recruited together. And I was a recruit at the game. And, of course, they won in the great double overtime victory. Ken Simonton skirting in off the G play into the right side of the end zone down there by the scoreboard. And we went into the locker room after the game, and my father was with us, and I think Troy's uncle was with him. And my dad said, congratulations to Coach Riley. And Coach Riley's just getting ready to do the hip-hips. And he turns around to Troy and I, and he says, the only thing that would make this day better is a commitment by the both of you. and Troy and I kind of looked at each other, and neither of us were really ready to commit. And I think he wasn't really talking to me. He was talking to Troy, because that really would have made it a great day. But, it was a lot of fun, and that's a great memory I have.
Talk about a sales job, that big moment. And let's just, put icing on. Let's just put the cherry on top of a great day.
That's good recruiting, though, by Coach Riley. All get caught up in that moment. That's he gave it a shot.
It's kind of like proposing on the 20-yard line during a game. You got to say
right.
Yes.
Exactly. Right after Brandon Cook scores and Williamson makes a field goal. Pretty good timing on Evanson's part. You know, Evanson did not play in the 2007 Civil War. It was Matt Severson that did. Severson, in the Beavers' last win, ended up having the big game, 100-plus yards. The Beavers won that thing. I remember Alexis Cerna making a 41-yard field goal in bad weather and conditions to keep the game going. And the great James Rogers with a fly sweep. But the play I remember most is when the Beavers stuffed Jonathan Stewart on 4th down. Oregon trying to score to send the game into another overtime. The Beaver defense rallied and stuffed Stewart. And, you know, now they hope to be able to do that to number 24 for Oregon this weekend.
The great Severson, the pride of Bend, Oregon.
Exactly. And that Civil War start goes for like 143 and a long touchdown. It was great to see.
It's been a while, as Oregon State hasn't won a game, and long enough that the seniors, hoping for their first win, want to exit with a Civil War win. And of course, meaningful. Oregon State trying to get to a better bowl game out of this game and trying to keep Oregon from having any chance of getting to the Pac-12 championship game.
Oregon's one of the top programs in the nation. Great offense, great players, great defense. That's just great motivation. And the Civil War is one of the biggest games on our schedule. So it's fast-paced, hard hits, and whoever wins is basically the king of Oregon.
Well, he may be from Texas, but Storm Woods looking to become a king of Oregon as the Beavers try to win the Civil War for the first time in 5 years this weekend. Storm was on our set earlier on this show, and he said that he has believed all season long that the Ducks were a beatable team if you play the game the right way. Stanford proved that that is certainly the case, and the Beavers are going to try and make it 2 losses in a row for Oregon this weekend. It is time for our Broadway Toyota Keys to Success. All right, Mike, to win the game, what do they have to do?
I think the biggest thing, Katie, is to protect Sean Mannion, because I think plays are going to be made. They've got a couple of their key playmakers out in Avery Patterson and John Boyette in their secondary, that if the Beavers protect Mannion, he's going to be able to make plays downfield. But protection's the key. Nick Aliotti has a very creative blitzing scheme. They pressure a lot. Beavers are going to have to protect.
Now, I know at Patterson and Boyette are out, but Eric Dargan, the next man in, is extremely impressive as well.
Yes,
Perhaps
he
even
is.
better than Patterson.
He's a good player.
All right, Tim, protecting Sean Mannion, your Broadway Toyota key to success for a Beaver win.
It will go hand in hand with protecting Sean. It'll be very efficient on 3rd down and keeping drives alive. That's how Stanford was successful, and actually Cal was pretty successful the week before. They kept drives alive, they moved the ball down the field, and they scored touchdowns, and that's what they're going to have to do. Convert 3rd downs, keep drives alive.
That's right. And, you know, Jordan Poyer was saying that it's very important to kind of control those big plays, the explosion plays. And I got to catch up with him and Marcus Wheaton earlier this week about being seniors and what it means to be in the Civil War. And we're kind of comparing and contrasting that with some Oregon players. So we are going to be doing CSN Game Day live from 9 a.m. until noon on Saturday. You guys will both be joining me. We'll have Kenny Wheaton and Chris Miller. So you guys be sure to tune in there and go ahead and, you know, get that hashtag trending CSN Game Day. And I know I interrupted you, so I'll let you jump back in.
No, I just want to say real quick, Mike, you have a really impressive statistic about Oregon, about how important it's going to be for the Beavers to score, not just keep drives alive, but to finish them off.
And they have to finish drives, and that's probably the most impressive thing, Katie, about Oregon's defense is they're second in the nation in red zone defense. Teams can get down in there, and those windows get tighter. They do a great job. Oregon's very physical and fast on defense. Everybody talks about their offense. They're really talented, physical, and fast on defense. So when you get an opportunity in the red zone to win the game, the Beavers are going to have to score touchdowns. 3 years ago in Eugene, they settled for field goals. They've got to be able to score touchdowns to win this game.
All right.
2007, quickly. You catch the fly, you get the handoff on the fly sweep, you're around the edge. You got a chance to win the Civil War, and you end up doing it. Did you know what that meant at that point as a Beaver?
To tell you the truth, I really didn't know. I mean, I ran it in. I just thought it was like, okay, I scored a touchdown. But, I mean, I think for everybody else, it was more than that because it was against the Ducks.
James Rogers talking about his game-winning score back in 2007, the last Beaver win in the Civil War, and Mike Parker picked that as his favorite Civil War moment earlier in the show, and it stopped the streak of the home team always winning when the Beavers won it at Autzen Stadium that year.
That's right, and they have another, chance to do it here and win in their own stadium. And now, as the show is about to end, it is time for Tweet to Tim using the hashtag USBeaver or Tim Ewis at CSNNW. Now, there was a moment we talked about when they put the Oregon score on the board at Reser during the Oregon State game, and the entire fan section got up and cheered just as a heartfelt, emotional response to their rival losing. But your tweet question this week is about whether that reaction may be good or bad in the bigger scheme of things.
Yeah, great question from Rick Maroney at Rick James 405.
Rick James.
Rick James 405. Question: does the Ducks' loss against Stanford work against the Beavers? I don't think there's a great answer one way or the other. If the Ducks had won and we beat them, yes, that changes the picture. As far as the focus, as far as the Ducks being more focused, I think they're going to be ready to play regardless if they won or lost.
Well, I think the question is bigger than that from the standpoint of in that incredible, surreal moment when Cooks is scoring and the result is coming in from Eugene, there was that sense of giddiness and exhilaration in the stadium such as I've never seen, heard, or felt in all my time in that stadium or really any stadium. It was incredible, the energy in the place. While that was going on, there were people running into the booth telling me, it's not a good thing for Oregon State, it's not a good thing, even though they were Beaver fans, and their argument was, if Oregon had stayed at number 1 or number 2, depending on the ranking, and then the Beavers won the Civil War, that boosts the Beavers' overall picture in the BCS and creates an at-large opportunity. But I listened to the stadium, saw everybody cheering and going crazy. I'm not going to tell those people right now, hey, it's not a good thing, it's not a good thing. I mean, everybody felt from kind of a visceral reaction. The rival loses, you just score a touchdown, you're way ahead. Life was good. Somebody told me it was the best 3 seconds of their life right then and there. So I do think it also gives you a blueprint of sorts to beat your rival. And
I think they know they're beatable now.
Vulnerability, yeah.
And that's the most important thing.
Yes, they are beatable, that is for sure. All right, well, Civil War just days away, and we cannot wait. Of course, game day will be live from Corvallis. 9 o'clock starting in the morning. Of course, it is a noon kickoff, and we will be back here next week to break it all down out of the Civil War. And of course, the Beavers will still have another game left after that with Nicholls State, but
2.
Well, 2 games, a bowl game, but I mean in the regular season. But it's all the Civil War, and we'll be back here next week. Have a great one, everyone.